Well, good day. So, for today's video, we're gonna talk about the cartoonized version of a classic movie trilogy when we talk about the first cartoon appearance of the McFlys and the Browns. Great Scott! So, alright, let's go! Yeah! So, we start off with Dr. Emmett Brown introducing the brand new DeLorean time machine to his best buddy, Marty McFly. A DeLorean that looks exactly like the old one that got destroyed, but some improvements. For one, it can now collapse into a suitcase, which, actually seems kind of convenient. Unfortunately, it weighs the exact same as a full-size car. So, I don't get it. It also has voice-activated time circuits. Not only that, when you do time travel, instead of being in the same location at a different time, you can instantly travel to a different location. Anywhere on Earth. Fancy. But Marty has more important things on his mind, like studying for his next exam, which is on the American Civil War, which was nothing civil about it. Also, nothing civil between Doc Brown's two kids, Jules and Verne. These kids, hey, like the exact polar opposites of each other, and always fighting. Jules is a super genius prodigy, where Verne just wants to play video games and be a slacker in life, I guess. So they go outside to blow off some steam. Meanwhile, Marty's hologram teaching aid accidentally voice activates the DeLorean to February 11, 1864 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where at the same time, Verne, for some reason decides to take the DeLorean for a spin, even though he's clearly too young to drive it and clearly not the smart one, so disaster may ensue. To which it does! He flies away and winds up in the middle of the Civil War, on the south side of the war, where he meets General Beauregard Tannen. Hey, that's Biff Tannen's ancestor! This should go well! Well, not really, because Verne gets recruited by the South and is being trained to be a war drummer. Meanwhile, in the present, Doc Brown's dog, Einstein, finds a photo of Verne in an old Civil War book. But it gets worse! As the book states, this platoon was wiped out the day after this photo was taken. Oh no! Verne is doomed! So Doc, Einstein, Jules, and Marty take the old steam time train to find Verne. But these guys just show up in the middle of a war, and they start walking around like they own the place, looking for Verne. Not even a second thought of gee, I wonder if something could happen to us, being in the middle of a war. Something like, I don't know, Marty and Einstein being kidnapped and the steam time train being, confiscated. Or maybe, Jules and Doc being captured by the North because those soldiers think that they are deserters. Stuff like that. Oh, what? That's exactly what happened? Oh, gosh! Later, in the North camp, Jules tries to get his grand uncle, General Ulysses Clayton, to stop the war, but to no avail. Really weird how, claiming you're from the future and you're the descendant of that person somehow doesn't really sway their opinion on things, eh? Ha! That method only worked for me twice, but even then it was kind of a stretch. But the general does have a crude electrical generator, which gives Doc Brown an idea. After he steals a whole bunch of other supplies for this idea. Next day, at the war, as the North and the South are about to clash on the battlefield, all of their guns become possessed and they start flying away! Oh my god! Spirits! This battlefield is haunted! Oh, no, wait, actually it's not. Whoa, jumping to conclusions again, me, hey? Oh, jeez. It's just Doc Brown with his brand new electromagnet being turned on. Phew. But the magnet fails and the soldiers get all of their guns back. They do? How? If the magnet fails, wouldn't all of the guns just fall to the ground right where they are? Why are they flying back to the soldiers? Maybe this place is haunted. Huh. Anywho, Jules and Verne wind up in the middle of the oncoming foray between the two armies. Seeing as they're basically doomed, they start hugging each other in fear, just waiting for the inevitable crush. But the crush doesn't come. Huh? Both sides stop their advances to reflect on these two brothers hugging in a war. And it makes them realize that war is stupid. Why are we fighting each other? We're all brothers. Which is a pretty good moral to the story. And so these two platoons decide to stop the battle and work towards peace. So the day is saved. Hooray! Verne is found and reunited with his family. Everyone's safe and the war is over. Which would completely alter the timeline. And now the future is all kind of up in the air. Who knows what's gonna happen? Huh. But oh well, that's for a different episode, I guess, as everyone flies back to the future. And with that, that is the end of this. Oh, no, wait, there's more. Doc Brown is doing a video diary thing where he and his lab assistant, some guy named Bill, are showing kids how to make an electromagnet at home. Huh. Just in case you're ever caught in the middle of a battle and you need to steal someone's bayonet, this is how you do it. Science! And with that, now is the end of this Future Past Tale! Hey, like, man, oh man, not too shabby. You know, like a pretty neat little cartoon. Like most of you, I do love the Back to the Future trilogy. Especially part 3, like that would be my favorite for sure. And after that, you wanted to watch some more stories of Back to the Future. Like, when could we get part 4? Well, probably never, you know? But if we can't get more movies, at least we have a cartoon series. Which is pretty neat, you know? It's like, yay, I get to watch some more Back to the Future stuff, but also, this is definitely written for a younger audience. But even with that, like, it's still pretty well done. Pretty darn funny. Sure, some things are pretty silly and slapstick and all that kind of stuff, but man, some of the other jokes kind of come at you pretty fast and pretty constant, and like it is pretty entertaining. And any change they made to it makes sense for this cartoon series. Well, kind of, unless you ignore thinking in the 4th dimension, Marty. So in this episode, if they went back in time and they stopped a battle from happening, they would have altered the future, right? They would have gone back to the present and it all would have been different, like you have seen in Back to the Future Part 2. I know, like, it would have been a different timeline, but the way they wrote the mechanics of, time travel in this trilogy, it just would have been a different future. Which was kind of an important thing in the movies, right? Like, don't change the past, you know? If you do, Biff Tannen will be like some super rich jerk. But none of that matters, I guess, eh? Just show up in the middle of a war in a flying train. I'm sure that won't disturb anything, eh? But, like I say, it's a pretty decent series, considering that they were making a kid show out of it, so, like, it works. If you want to watch some more Back to the Future, like you have this whole series, it's kind of a different vibe, though. But with that, we do have some more behind-the-scenes kind of things with Back to the Future and the movies and the cartoon and this and that, all and that kind of going on over here. So yes, indeed, hey? Back to the Future, the animated series. So how did we go from movies to a cartoon? Well, actually pretty quick and easy. So you had the first Back to the Future movie, which was released in 1985 by Universal Studios, where Universal Studios wanted the movie to be called Spaceman from Pluto. A horrible name? I'm glad they kept the original. Nonetheless, in this movie, we met many fantastic characters that will appear in this cartoon series, such as Dr. Emmett Brown, Marty McFly, Einstein the dog, Biff Tannen, and of course, the fantastic Delorean time machine. This movie was a pretty big success, so of course there would be a sequel, which happened with Part 2 in 1989, where we learn the DeLorean can now fly, as we've also seen in this cartoon. To round out the trilogy, we had Part 3, which was released in 1990, where we met some more of our fantastic cartoon characters, such as Clara Clayton, who later married Doc Brown, and they had 2 children, Jules and Verne. We also see a brand new time machine that is made out of a steam train. So like, man oh man, hey, like this trilogy was frickin' fantastic! From Part 1 to Part 3, every movie was great! And people wanted more stories of Back to the Future, but the story ended in Part 3 and was actually tied up, pretty neatly. The DeLorean was completely smashed to hell. Doc Brown figured he's gonna just settle down, with his new young family. And Marty McFly will go off and do whatever Marty McFly does. So it would be a bit more difficult to create Back to the Future Part 4 because you would have to undo this ending just to create a new start and a new ending after. And yeah, that would seem like movies for the sake of making movies, not, for telling a great story. So if we're not gonna go to the movies, why don't we go to television? You could do a live-action television series on this, but you would be spending a heck of a lot of money building new different time period sets like every episode, and you would hire different actors to play the characters, so, that might be a turnoff for the fans. So when CBS was building a series, they figured the easiest and best way would be to make an animated series. As long as the characters looked enough like the characters from the movie, who cares if they sound slightly different, right? And so with that, Back to the Future, the animated series, first debuted in September of 1991 on CBS, with our featured episode. Even though this series does take place after the events of Back to the Future Part 3, and it's made to look like it is an actual continuation of that story, it is, but it is actually made in its own alternate reality. So many things that happen in this TV series are just a bit too zany to be, part of the original movie trilogy. So if you keep it separate, you still got your, really out there fantastic stories, but they still try to make it as close as possible. As we know, the DeLorean was completely destroyed at the end of Part 3. In our featured episode, Doc Brown stated that this is the brand new DeLorean, not the original, so he rebuilt it with some fantastic new upgrades. As I've mentioned earlier, with the voice-activated time circuits, how it can turn into a suitcase, and how it can automatically leap from destination to destination. With the original trilogy, Robert Zemeckis stated firmly that the time travel mechanics would be that you can change time, but not location. Which sounds logical, but if you start to think about it, if you can't change your location and the Earth is always moving, would you wind up in space once in a while? If you're time traveling? So you kind of would have to change location no matter what every time you do time travel. But still, it does break a rule from the movies. Also, one of the familiar things from the movies is meeting ancestors of established characters from the past. Like you would always see Biff Tannen being a villain, or his ancestors, Mad Dog Tannen, and also the ancestors of other characters like Seamus McFly, and other characters like that, so that is something that was continued in every episode. You would see the bad guy being Biff Tannen, ancestor of some sort, and you would see the good guy ancestors, either McFly's or Brown's or Clayton's, everywhere throughout the world and throughout history. Also, it is a Back to the Future actor reunion in some sorts. In the live-action segments at the beginning and at the end of the show, you do see Christopher Lloyd reprising his character of Doc Brown, which is really cool to see. However, he does not provide the voice of Doc Brown for the animated segments. That voice is done by Dan Castellaneta, most famously known as the voice of Homer Simpson. Although, Mary Steenburgen does provide the voice of Clara, and Thomas F. Wilson returns to voice the character of Biff Tannen. The live-action sequence also featured Doc Brown's lab assistant, Bill Nye. So previously, he's already had some gigs on TV in the skit show Almost Live, and will soon land a major show called Bill Nye the Science Guy. But this series, as it was somewhat of a decent success. It did last for 2 seasons, and it did produce some spin-off merchandising. Harvey Comics did produce a Back to the Future comic book based on this TV series. Even if it was just a limited run, it still exists. Also, McDonald's did release Back to the Future Happy Meal toys based on this TV series, with such vehicles as the DeLorean, the Time Train, the Hoverboard, and Verne's Junkmobile, which happened at some point in the series, I don't know where. And ever so randomly often, you will get a callback from this TV series in other Back to the Future projects. For example, in Back to the Future, the video game, in the episode 5 story called Out of Time, they went to a location called the Palace Saloon, which they stated was built by Beauregard Tannen, who was featured in this episode. And we even did see Beauregard Tannen in the Back to the Future comic books published by IDW Comics. In issue number 5, a story called Clara's Story, learning about her past, we did see Ulysses S. Clayton from this episode, even if it was just a brief cameo. So it was quick and easy to go from movies to cartoon, and then you get video games, you get comic books, you get toys and everything. Like, oh my god, can't get enough of Back to the Future. So at least we do have this TV series giving us some more fantastic stories, even though it's definitely written for a younger audience. But still, hooray! And so we'll get to other Back to the Future stories when we get to them. But for now, with this, that, those, and the other things, I guess that's that. Also, if you're interested, I created my own comic book channel, 215 Comics. And currently, I have created my own cartoon series, The Adventures of the Density. And recently started a radio series featuring my newest character, Elastomorph, with more titles to come. So if you want to check it out, I'll leave a link up top here to that channel and some links at the end of the video. Yay! Right on, and there you go. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you liked it as much as I did making it. Also, feel free to check out the source material that I featured in this video. And if you want to leave a comment on anything you may have liked or things I might have missed in this, feel free to do so. Or anything else, just to say hi. That's cool too. And other than that, have a great day. Thanks.